Now, I'm sure some of you guys know someone that was in the military, whether it was your brother, sister, mother, father, grandma, grandpa, maybe it wasn't even a relative, it was just a friend. And I'm sure that if they were in the military, chances are they were deployed, or maybe once during their service they actually received a care package. Or better yet, maybe some of you guys out there actually have assembled and sent your very own care package. Well, I pretty much did just that last year. I assembled and sent my very own care package, my first one. And it was to my mom's cousin, Jared Kruger. Prior to this, he was already in the Air Force for 20 years, and it wasn't until that exact moment when he was deployed overseas to go to Kuwait. And it pretty much this ties directly into the purpose of my project, which is, of course, to send care packages overseas to soldiers. But with this, there are a couple main goals. I wanted to raise money for the supplies to send these care packages overseas. And I also wanted to educate students on how it is exactly they can help with this sort of cause themselves. But I also wanted to kind of stimulate like patriotism and a sense of American pride, while also sending a good old piece of America overseas. But to fulfill this, there are a number of steps I'd have to do. First off, I'd have to get contacts, whether it was someone that could assist me with the whole process of getting the package together and sending it, or I also needed recipients of the packages. Then I needed to figure out what is exactly I'm going to put in these packages, because there's no point in sending an empty box. But to go along with the other goal I stated about how I want to educate the students on how it is they can exactly participate in this, I need to plan lessons and then teach it to them. Then, of course, I need to raise money for the supplies I'm going to put inside these packages. And lastly, mail them out. But when it comes to what exactly was inside the packages that I sent, it first started with entertainment items. So I had things like puzzles, coloring books, and pencil and paper. This is very useful for, of course, downtimes. I mean, when you're over there, you're not always going to be doing something every second of the day. And then food items, food condiments. So I had stuff like candy, gum, drink mixes, and like a non-perishable food such as like granola bars. And then those who don't know what condiments are, it's like salt and pepper. Then there was the hygiene products, because like especially if you're deployed out in the field, you don't always have like running water and things like that, or other items that take care of yourself. So things like chapstick, shampoo, conditioner, razor blades, and germ wipes are a very good addition to the whole total amount of items that are in there. And then there was letters and thank you cards. I'll touch on this in a second. So when it comes to what it is exactly I taught in my seminars to those kids, I first started with explaining what exactly is conflict, like the nature around how it pertains to the military. Because of course, conflict in the military have a pretty close relationship. And then this would then change to two significantly historic conflicts, like the Vietnam War and the first Persian Gulf War. Especially the Persian Gulf War, because I mean that's like what led to what we're in today. And then the draft I also covered, because especially the newer generation, they don't quite know exactly the magnitude of like what the draft actually is. And then I talked about Veterans Day and the history behind it and its roots in the First World War, because Veterans Day is a very important holiday. Because even if you don't have or if you don't have someone in your family that's in the military, you don't know anyone that's in the military, it's very important that we celebrate it, because we're honoring the sacrifice of people that have done for this nation ever since it was created, to keep our liberties. And I closed it off by talking about like the best things to put inside a care package, because especially when it comes to care packages for military members, it needs to be based around more practicality rather than just a bunch of random items, because everything has to have its own specific use. Then the last thing I had them do was the letters and thank you cards. So pretty much their goal was to create creative thank you cards, like out of construction paper, and as well as write a letter that was meant to be addressed to troops, because these letters actually were put inside of the 12 packages that I sent overseas. Now, of course I need a way to raise money to get all these supplies, so I needed a fundraiser. Pretty much how this worked was, I got a couple of volunteers, and each of them stood by a pole, like the very ones who are sitting around right now. And essentially what would happen, someone would come up, they'd give whatever amount of money they want to donate to the cause, and then they'd get to put a round of duct tape on. Of course, as this progressed, my money was flowing through, and eventually they wouldn't be able to move, and it was a pretty interesting spectacle, entertained a lot of people. But the main thing of this fundraiser is if the goal is met, sending the packages, then we tape our favorite principal, this parrot, to the pole as well. So the process of actually sending these packages out, there was a lot of stuff that went into this, because especially since it's an international sending, there's things like restrictions. Like you couldn't, for liquids, you couldn't, they have to be bagged in a specific way, either double or triple, usually triple, and as well as a custom restriction, especially because since my packages went to Iraq, there could be items like alcohol or pork in it. But of course, there was also the custom forms. The custom forms were pretty fun, to say the least, because, I've never done any of them, of course. It's a pretty interesting experience. But throughout this project, there was definitely 3 resources that stood out a lot. So, Specialist Amanda Jimenez, it was her and her squad, they were the ones that I sent the packages to over in Iraq. And she actually is the one that handles the squads, and kind of like a manager in a way. So she was a very important contact to have, because she could answer any questions I had about sending them and give me address information, because of course when you're sending out a package overseas to someone in the military, it's not just it's not like a normal home address, it's called an APO address. And then First Sergeant Jerry Kruger, of course without him, and sending that first package back in junior year, I wouldn't have had the kind of prior information, with the different rounds I have to go through to send packages. And the United States Postal Service, there was them on their website, especially, there was a website and the postal workers at the office. Without them, a lot of it would of course been very difficult and really possible, because they kind of detailed the entire process on how to get your packages over there. So if we look at all the things that went well, of course, I achieved my main goal. I sent 12 packages overseas to the soldiers. I had a very great contact that used to work as a recipient of these packages. And all the supplies in the packages were bought donations from the fundraiser. But there were also some things that didn't go as well. I definitely could have managed my time a lot more accordingly. And it was also, at the beginning of the year when I first started, it was difficult to find a good contact at first to send the packages to. Especially now, because there's not nearly as many soldiers overseas as there were a couple of years ago, since most of them are being pulled out. And then lastly, the shipping costs are definitely still a bit much, even after dividing the supplies into the packages. But when it comes to the lessons I've learned throughout the project, it starts with definitely a good detailed timeline. You want to know what exactly you're doing on what month, what day, what hour, even what minute. It helps a lot. And budgeting, because even though I'm getting all my supplies from a 99-cent store, a dollar store, it tends to, of course, to add up. You're buying 12 of everything. The importance of communication, that's a very good one, especially between me and the staff, because if there isn't good communication, then you can't work as a team when you're supposed to get things done. And lastly, don't take freedom for granted. This is a very important one, because we have all our liberties here, all our rights, and of course there's people that have to sacrifice their, not even sacrifice, just risk their lives daily to make sure we can keep those liberties. So I definitely have a much greater appreciation for those things. And there are some people that I'd like to thank. First, starting with Mr. Quinn and Ms. Smith, because they really helped me on keeping me on track and making sure I was getting things I needed done. Of course, my mom, because she was driving me around all over the place, because of course I don't have my license yet. She was advising me when I had like questions or I needed help with something or input, and she was helping like organize stuff if I needed help. Amanda Jimenez, of course, because without her I wouldn't have had like a group of people to send the packages to. Skino, definitely. And my volunteers, because without the volunteers that helped during the fundraiser, then of course if the fundraiser wouldn't happen, I probably wouldn't be standing here right now. As well as the people that supported the way through, whether it was they participated in the fundraiser or even if they just came up to me and said like, yo man, I like what you're doing. I really appreciate those people. It kind of gave me a lot more confidence that I needed to make sure I saw through the whole thing. And the USPS, because without them, then I wouldn't have had the information I needed to go through the different loops you had to send, and the ones, of course, that were actually physically shipping the package. And lastly, of course, I have to thank my seniors. So, in conclusion, my project was definitely a success because I met all the goals that I set. But what I'm mostly proud of is I feel like that I definitely left an impression with some people. I kind of inspired them to maybe do something similar. Because, I mean, even if it's just one person, it would still make me very much happy. You know, they kind of participated in the cause. So I'd like to thank all you guys for listening, and God bless America.